He never tries to dominate a room, yet the room changes the moment he stops reacting. People who once felt confident around him suddenly become unsure of themselves, because a Sigma's silence forces truth to surface. And that's the part no one expects. When he refuses to be controlled, everyone else starts revealing who they really are. His energy doesn't shout, it exposes. His calm doesn't retreat, it disarms. And the moment others realize they can't bend him, they start fearing the power he never once tried to show. But this strength didn't come from ego, it came from years of watching, learning, and breaking free from expectations that others blindly accepted. A Sigma becomes uncontrollable the day he understands that emotional independence is the highest form of freedom. He no longer needs approval, validation, or permission. And the world loses its grip on him instantly. This is why people can feel him shift long before he says a word. When he pulls back, they sense it. When he detaches, they panic. When he decides his peace matters more than their chaos, the entire dynamic collapses. That's the quiet transformation most never see coming. Before we continue, answer this. Have you ever felt the moment you stopped explaining yourself and everything around you changed? Comment the word shadow step if you're still watching. And subscribe to Ultrawise so you never miss the next chapter of your evolution. He doesn't react emotionally, which removes other people's power over him. When a Sigma stops reacting emotionally, the world around him shifts in ways most people never notice. Suddenly, the arguments that once pulled him in fall flat. The provocations aimed at triggering him lose their impact, and the individuals who once relied on his emotional responses to control the dynamic become disoriented. What they don't understand is that a Sigma's silence is not avoidance. It's strategy. He has learned that every emotional reaction is a form of currency, and those who give it away freely always end up indebted to someone else. So instead of responding instantly, he pulls his energy inward, creating a space where clarity replaces chaos. In that space, the motives behind people's actions become obvious. The patterns that were once hidden begin to reveal themselves, and he sees with startling accuracy who is genuine and who simply wants a reaction to validate their own instability. This emotional stillness didn't come from weakness or detachment, it came from experience. He has been manipulated, misunderstood, and underestimated enough times to understand that people often push hardest when they realize they can provoke a response. So he learned to master the one skill most never achieve: internal control. When someone tries to guilt-trip him, he doesn't justify himself. When someone attacks him, he doesn't defend impulsively. When someone tries to draw him into conflict, he simply observes. And the longer he observes, the more power shifts in his direction. Because while others expose their intentions through emotional outbursts, the Sigma reveals nothing. His neutrality becomes unsettling. His silence becomes a mirror. People end up revealing more about themselves in front of him than he ever reveals to them. And that alone creates a psychological advantage that no confrontation could ever achieve. As a result, he becomes the one factor no one can predict or manipulate. When he chooses to speak, his words carry weight. When he chooses to walk away, it's final. And when he chooses to remain calm, he gains the clarity to make decisions others never see coming. Emotional independence becomes his armor, invisible, quiet, unbreakable. And the moment he masters it, every person who once relied on his reactions to feel powerful loses their leverage. Because controlling someone who no longer reacts is impossible, and influencing someone who sees through the game is pointless. That is why a Sigma's calm isn't passive. It is the kind of strength that ends battles before they ever begin. He sets boundaries without announcing them, and people feel it instantly. A Sigma never needs to declare a boundary for it to exist. The shift happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet everyone around him senses it. One day, he is available, present, willing to give energy to conversations, people, and problems that don't belong to him. And then, without warning, the access changes. He answers differently. He responds slower. He no longer carries emotional weight that isn't his to hold. And even though he never says, "This is my limit," the message lands with unmistakable clarity. People feel the distance, the recalibration, the withdrawal of permission they once took for granted. There is no dramatic announcement, no confrontation, no speech, just an internal decision he makes quietly, and his behavior aligns with it instantly. Those who were draining him feel it like a door that suddenly closed. Those who were taking advantage begin to panic, and those who respect him adjust naturally, sensing the shift without needing an explanation. His boundaries form through observation, not anger. He studies how people treat him when he's giving, when he's tired, when he's silent, and when he pushes back. Over time, he collects patterns, not excuses, and once he understands someone's pattern, he adjusts his access accordingly. This is why his boundaries feel so powerful. They aren't reactions, they are decisions. When someone crosses a line, he doesn't explode or argue. He simply stops offering the parts of himself that were being misused. He becomes harder to reach, harder to read, harder to use as an emotional dumping ground. His time becomes more selective. His attention becomes more intentional. And suddenly, people who never respected his presence begin to notice his absence. That is the silent impact of a Sigma's boundary. It doesn't need to be spoken to be undeniable. Over time, this quiet form of self-protection becomes one of his strongest forms of power. People start treating him with more care, not because he demanded it, but because his energy now requires it. They sense that he is no longer willing to entertain disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional chaos. And the ones who cannot handle those boundaries naturally drift away, leaving only those aligned with his values. This refinement process is subtle but transformative. It allows him to rise without the weight of unnecessary connections. It protects his peace without creating enemies, and it ensures that every person who remains in his life is there by alignment, not by accident. His boundaries are silent, but their effect is loud. And that is why no one ever forgets the moment they feel them. He questions motives instead of accepting words at face value. A Sigma never takes someone's words as the full story. While most people listen to what is said, he listens to what is meant. He watches the pauses, the hesitation, the tone. He notices the contradiction between someone's words and their behavior. And long before the truth becomes obvious to anyone else, he has already mapped out the real intention behind the conversation. This doesn't make him cynical. It makes him perceptive. Experience has taught him that words can be polished, rehearsed, or strategically chosen, but motives always leak through action. So when someone approaches him with flattery, promises, or emotional pleas, he doesn't fall for the surface-level narrative. He studies why they are saying it, what they gain from it, and what they hope he won't notice. And because of that, manipulation rarely reaches him. Deception struggles to take root. He sees the game before others even realize they're playing one. This depth of perception didn't appear overnight. It was shaped by years of watching people betray their own words with inconsistent behavior. The friend who preached loyalty but disappeared in difficult times. The partner who said all the right things but kept choosing convenience over commitment. The coworker who pretended to support him but used his successes as stepping stones for their own advancement. These experiences sharpened his instincts. Now, when someone speaks, he pays more attention to what they avoid saying, what they emphasize too heavily, or what they try to hide behind kindness. He notices when intentions don't match empathy and when apologies disguise manipulation. And because he questions motives instead of reacting emotionally, he gains clarity faster than most people even realize something is off. This ability gives him a quiet psychological advantage in every interaction. While others get caught up in emotional narratives, he remains anchored in truth. While others argue over words, he evaluates patterns. While others fall for charming explanations, he recognizes subtle red flags hidden beneath them. And because he sees people's intentions early, he avoids situations that would trap or drain him. He walks away before chaos begins. He adjusts his expectations before disappointment hits. He redirects his energy before someone can exploit it. In a world where so many people shape their words to influence, impress, or manipulate, the Sigma becomes nearly untouchable. He sees too clearly, too deeply, too early. And that makes him the one person who cannot be fooled. He refuses to compete for validation, making him impossible to control. Sigma moves through the world with a quiet confidence that unsettles people who rely on external approval to feel significant. While others chase applause, recognition, or social rank, he remains anchored in something far more stable: self-assurance that isn't borrowed from anyone else. This refusal to compete for validation is what makes him unpredictable. You can't motivate him with praise, and you can't manipulate him with disapproval. He doesn't bend his identity to fit a group, a trend, or a hierarchy, and because he isn't chasing anyone's acceptance, he becomes one of the few people who cannot be steered, pressured, or controlled. Those who try quickly learn that emotional leverage fails, social pressure fails, and silent disapproval fails, because he simply doesn't care about earning approval from people who haven't earned his respect. This mindset didn't come from arrogance, but from experience. He has seen how easily people lose themselves when they chase validation. He watched friends mold their personalities just to belong. He witnessed coworkers sacrifice authenticity for praise from people who didn't value them. He observed relationships where one person controlled the other through fear of rejection, and somewhere along that journey, he learned a rare truth. The moment you depend on external approval, you become vulnerable to manipulation. So he made a decision, consciously or instinctively, to build an identity that doesn't need applause to stand strong. When someone tries to impress him, he notices the effort behind it. When someone tries to shame him into compliance, he remains unmoved. When someone tries to lure him with attention, he evaluates the intention, not the flattery. His independence becomes a shield few know how to penetrate. This is why people often feel off balance around him. They can't predict him because he's not driven by the same desires they are. They can't influence him because he doesn't fear disapproval. They can't trap him because he doesn't seek belonging through conformity. Instead, he moves at his own pace, in his own direction, guided only by what aligns with his values, and without the need to compete. He rises quietly above the noise, becoming the kind of man who commands respect without begging for it. This refusal to chase validation is not rebellion, it is mastery, and it turns him into someone who stands outside the reach of manipulation, immune to the emotional games that control so many others. He stays detached from emotional traps that others fall into. A Sigma has a rare ability to recognize emotional traps long before they tighten around him. While most people get pulled into drama, guilt, manipulation, or reactive conflict, he stands just far enough outside the emotional storm to see its structure clearly. He understands how easily emotions can be weaponized, how someone's tears can become leverage, how anger can shift blame, how silence can provoke insecurity, and how flattery can disguise control. Instead of being swept away by these tactics, he steps back and studies them. His detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It allows him to see the intention behind the emotional display and prevents him from reacting impulsively. This is why people who rely on emotional chaos to manipulate others often fail with him. Their usual strategies fall flat because he doesn't give them the reaction they are trying to provoke. He remains steady, neutral, calm, and that calm becomes the barrier that emotional traps cannot penetrate. This ability developed from painful lessons. He has lived through situations where emotion clouded his judgment, where reacting too quickly cost him peace, and where caring too deeply for the wrong people opened the door to manipulation. Over time, he learned the difference between genuine emotion and emotional tactics. He noticed how some people cry only when confronted, how others become angry only when caught, how apologies flow only when consequences appear. These patterns sharpened his intuition. Now, when someone tries to pull him into conflict, he disengages. When someone tries to guilt-trip him, he doesn't explain himself. When someone tries to provoke jealousy or insecurity, he simply doesn't respond. His detachment becomes a filter, allowing only genuine emotional connections to reach him, and blocking everything that is manipulative, reactive, or draining. This emotional discipline gives him an enormous psychological advantage. While others get tangled in arguments, he observes. While others chase closure, he chooses distance. While others absorb emotional burdens, he refuses to carry what isn't his. This is why he often appears unshakable, not because he feels less, but because he has trained himself to respond to emotion with intention rather than impulse. And the more he practices this detachment, the more powerful he becomes. People cannot control what they cannot provoke. They cannot guilt someone who doesn't depend on their approval. They cannot trap someone who refuses to react. His calm becomes his weapon, his shield, and his freedom. Turning him into the one person emotional manipulation can never reach. He walks away the moment respect is gone, without hesitation or guilt. The Sigma does not cling to places where his worth is questioned. The moment respect fades, even slightly, something inside him shifts. He becomes quieter, more observant, detached in a way that others often notice too late. He doesn't argue for his value, negotiate his dignity, or beg for better treatment. He simply recognizes the change, accepts it without drama, and prepares to leave. It's not an emotional reaction. It's a decision rooted in self-respect. He learned long ago that once respect is broken, the relationship, the friendship, the partnership, or the environment will never feel the same again. Trust becomes thin, conversations become hollow, and his presence becomes a burden instead of a contribution. So he listens to the first sign of disrespect like a warning bell, and when it rings, he doesn't hesitate. He quietly pulls back, taking with him the energy people once took for granted. This instinct was shaped by experience. He had stayed too long in places where he was undervalued, tolerated disrespect disguised as jokes, accepted inconsistencies from people who claimed loyalty, and gave second chances to those who didn't deserve the first. Every time he ignored the signs, he paid the price in emotional exhaustion, disappointment, and self-doubt. Eventually, he realized a truth most people avoid. Disrespect doesn't happen by accident. It comes from assumptions that he will stay, that he will forgive, that he will continue giving even when others stop appreciating. Once he learned this, his tolerance transformed into clarity. Now, the moment someone crosses the line even subtly, he sees it for what it is, a forecast of what is coming next. And rather than waiting for the storm, he walks away while the sky is still blue. What makes his exit so powerful is its finality. He doesn't leave with threats or explanations. He doesn't announce his disappointment. He doesn't seek closure. He simply withdraws, quietly reclaiming his time, attention, and emotional investment. For the people he leaves behind, the silence is jarring. They feel the absence long before they understand the reason. They replay conversations, searching for the moment they lost him. They replay conversations, searching for the moment they lost him. Meanwhile, he has already moved on, lighter, clearer, and stronger. Walking away isn't an ending for him. It is protection. It is the act of choosing peace over chaos, dignity over attachment, and self-respect over temporary comfort. And because he never walks back through the door he closed, The world quickly learns, losing a Sigma's respect is losing him completely. He leads himself, which makes him unpredictable and untouchable. A Sigma follows no script, no trend, and no set of rules designed by someone else. He leads himself, guided not by external pressure but by internal clarity. This independence makes him impossible to predict, and that unpredictability is exactly what protects him. People can only control what they understand. They can only influence what they can anticipate. But a Sigma's choices come from a place outside the structure everyone else operates in. While others wait for approval, advice, or direction, he moves on instinct. While others follow groups, leaders, or systems, he follows purpose. And because he does not anchor his decisions to the expectations around him, he becomes a force that no one can map or manipulate. Those who attempt to steer him quickly realize he cannot be guided, pressured, or persuaded into paths that don't align with his identity. This self-leadership was not something he was given. It was something he earned through solitude, failure, observation, and relentless self-awareness. He spent years studying people, systems, and patterns. He learned how easily crowds can be controlled, how quickly people abandon their values when under pressure, how often individuals trade authenticity for belonging. Watching all of this from the outside shaped him. It gave him a deep understanding of how influence works and how to avoid ever becoming vulnerable to it. Now, when someone tries to recruit him into drama, competition, or conformity, he remains unmoved. When society tries to funnel him into a predictable life structure, he steps to the side. When someone attempts to guilt or shame him into obedience, he does not react. He knows exactly who he is, where he's going, and why he refuses to move like everyone else. His unpredictability is not chaos. It is strategic freedom. He can change direction overnight if something no longer aligns. He can rebuild himself in silence without anyone noticing. He can disappear from toxic environments before they collapse. He can cut ties without warning when respect is gone. And because no one can anticipate his next step, no one can trap him. This autonomy creates a kind of psychological invisibility. He becomes the one person people cannot pin down, categorize, or control. And the more he grows into this self-guided identity, the more untouchable he becomes. He doesn't need followers, recognition, or validation to lead a powerful life. He only needs alignment. And that is why a Sigma male stands outside the reach of influence. A man guided by no one, yet respected by everyone. When a man learns to lead himself, something irreversible happens. He no longer bends for approval, he no longer reacts to pressure, and he no longer fears walking alone. That is why a Sigma becomes the one presence people cannot predict, cannot influence, cannot reshape. His strength is not loud, and his confidence is not performed. It's built in silence, refined in solitude, and revealed only through action. And once he reaches that point of inner clarity, the world can no longer move him the way it once did. He becomes untouchable, not because he's closed off, but because he finally knows what and who truly deserves his energy. Before you go, answer this one question. Have you ever felt yourself becoming stronger the moment you stopped seeking approval? Drop the word Iron Mind in the comments if you watched to the end, and don't forget to subscribe to UltraWise for more videos designed to elevate your understanding, sharpen your mindset, and strengthen your evolution.